Welcome to Vegas Circle with Pacquaio and Chris. And today, joining the circle with us, we've got Emmy-nominated producer who actually began his career with HBO in his senior year at UNLV. And he's recently worked on basically the most popular sports documentary, I'm going to say that, with ESPN and Netflix called The Last Dance, which was focused on Chicago Bulls' Dynasty in the 90s. I'm going to call him the GOAT. I'm wearing a shirt right now, Michael Jordan. So Maxson, man, good to see you, brother. How you doing?
Doing great. I have to say, I do love that shirt right there. Like,
there
that
we
is
go,
a good,
man. Yeah.
it's a great, like, dunk. This is like bad radio for anyone listening, like via radio, but it's Jordan dunking and it's got faith over it and it's dunking on fear. And it's just like, it's just good vibes.
I had to do it, man. I had to do it, especially in this day and age right now, man. I mean, it's crazy. Yes. All the scariness and BS going on. Got to have some faith a little bit, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's great to be with you guys and great to catch up.
So, we want to jump right in. How in the world did you get connected with HBO, man? Your senior year at UNLV, you got connected with them, right? With HBO Sports?
So it's one of those things where you always get asked, like, is it better to be lucky than good? And that's the epitome of, like, it's way better to be lucky than good. I was a reporter at the student newspaper. And I wanted to be part of the boxing scene. I liked boxing. I looked at the reporting scene around boxing at that time, and I saw a lot of old people. And I said, okay, this is a sport that has an avenue for a young journalist type. This is before, like, too many blogs were going out there. You still kind of had to have legitimate, backing from a publication to get credentials. And it's crazy to say that even the UNLV student newspaper gave that type of avenue. For the first couple of UFCs I went to, I sat ringside, which is like a ridiculous thing for a kid from, a school newspaper. Awesome. Yeah, no, it was great. And so, I started to see boxing as like this avenue into media. I was like, okay, that's my niche right there. I like the sport. I can go be good in the sport. I got lucky in that I knew Kevin Iole. He did a side job working at Apple, like one of the Apple Store and Fashion Show Mall on the weekends. And just like as a kind of a fun thing for him, but him and I became connected and close. And he took me to a few events and I was like, okay, I want to keep doing this stuff. And I learned from him and he took me under his wing. And so a couple years into my reporting career, HBO was doing a bunch of fights and they have a few not remote positions, but a few freelance positions that they need to fill. And one of them in the truck is called, round AD, which is just like you're in charge of the clock. It's like 3 minutes for a fight, 1 minute between rounds. And for whatever reason, they had a real hard time filling that role. They looked at me, there's like a cheap kid that if I actually worked out, it was great. And if they didn't work out, like on to the next one. And it worked out. I was really lucky that, when they called the UNLV sports information department, they go, yeah, we know this kid who just keeps on wanting to do boxing. And, it's just like total like luck sack right there.
Well, it's got to be powerful, being able to do that, and especially Vegas being the mecca, for boxing, UFC, and, obviously UFC's got the headquarters here, of course. And you worked on a few different projects with 24/7 and a couple of different projects with HBO Sports, correct?
So it wasn't until 2010 when I had already graduated that I was able to make a transition to becoming a full-time staffer in New York. After being a freelancer for them for, I think it was 2 or 3 years, they had an open position for, production associate.
Okay.
And I went out of my way to like talk to the senior producer of boxing and be like, hey, listen, I really want to do this. Like, I want to do this. And I remember the email, he goes, you would move to New York for this? I go, in a heartbeat. That was all I wrote back in the response. I go, I will do it in a heartbeat. And so from there, that was about 2010, early 2011 was when I moved out here. And that was kind of the beginning of everything. Like, New York opened up all these opportunities to work on 24/7. I had more involvement in the live fights. But also, like, HBO Sports, it was a real growing time for the business and documentaries and TV in a way. You went from so many things that were done. It wasn't, I wouldn't want to say linearly, but like, it was a big transition from, this is going to sound super old or whatever, but everything was shot on tape back then. And when I was still coming in, like, you're shooting on HD videotape. And so
crazy.
It's so nuts. Like, I
Yeah,
remember
that's
I
10
came
years
in here
ago,
and I
and you
was
can't
Came
even
along
believe
way quick. Yeah.
Yeah.
and yeah, exactly. So I was looking at these, and you have these digi-beta tapes. You're like, oh yeah, but this is like what I used to watch back in the day. And go, no, this is like the golden standard for us. And I remember it's still like crazy, but around 2011, 2012, 2013 was when, you know, the tapeless revolution started to take place. Hard drives got to be crazy, and it became the ability for more people to get their hands on things. You know, if you were going to access an Avid to actually edit stuff, you know,
Yeah.
it was a big piece of equipment. Like, that was a $20,000 investment back then. Now it's like $300, $400, and it works on your
Believe me.
laptop. It's crazy. So
Yeah,
it was
unbelievable.
definitely the right time to get in there and to start getting your hands dirty as
Mhm.
everything was changing in media.
You know what's crazy is they saw your hunger of being able to just move to New York, because a lot of people are willing to do that. You know, at a drop of a dime.
Well, and also just like, I mean, for me too, it was nuts. Like, the farthest west I'd ever lived at that, or the farthest east I'd ever lived was Vegas at that point. So this
Okay.
wasn't like a, you know, a small, like, oh, you know, go back there. It's like, you know, this is like, I didn't even own a winter coat before I came out here.
Oh,
I didn't even know what that was.
You go to New York, yeah. It's me and Chris are both from the
You get one
Midwest.
real quick, yeah.
Yeah, I'm from Chicago originally, and Chris is from Detroit. So that cold weather, we're loving it right now on the West Coast. So it's
Oh yeah.
they can take it.
My grandmother was about to ship me out, and she goes, what are you going to wear out there? And I had a hoodie on. I'm like 22,
Yeah.
23 years old. And she's like, oh no. I remember like her look on my face. She's like, you have no idea what you're in for.
Yes, especially New York is no joke, man. You get that wind hit you. So you kind of started off working on with HBO, and then you transitioned with the Circus. Was a
Yes.
show you worked on, and you were
Yes.
production with that. That's a powerful series, man. And I see that's still going with Showtime, right?
Yeah. The showrunner at the time for that show was an ex-HBO employee, colleague of mine, Scott Boggins.
Okay.
And I was looking to make a transition. I had been at HBO for 5 years. You know, HBO is now out of the boxing game. We didn't know that it was going to be that dramatic, but there were things that were kind of happening where you could kind of see, okay, you know, the documentaries had gone away from HBO Sports. 24/7s, which had been focused on other sports, hockey and things like that, were becoming more focused on boxing. You know, you were trying to see what else was out there. And Scott reached out, and we had gotten connected, and there was this opportunity to work on the Circus. For anybody who doesn't know the Circus, it was about the 2016 election, which was what it was originally focused on. Now it's kind of gone on to do the first 100 days of the Trump presidency, the midterm elections. Now it's kind of focused on 2020. But by then, the idea was we were going to do 24/7 for politics. And that idea had always been like, oh my gosh, like this would be amazing. The hope was that
you have a political science major. You have a background.
So
okay, that makes sense.
Natural
when we were meeting with
transition,
we were meeting with the executive producers, and they go, well, what makes you like the right people for this? And I remember I like teed up my answer for this, like, well, I may be just a sports jock, but you know, I you know, grew up in politics. I worked on gubernatorial campaigns for Gavin Newsom. You know, I kind of like really enjoyed that thrust of it. So it was a real challenge, but really, really interesting to kind of like, you know, break out of the sports mold for a spell and a year, and to also just live on the road for a year. You know, I think when I started working on that series, I'd been to 20, 23 states, maybe. By the end of it, I've been to 46. Like, you're going to places you've never been to Iowa, never been to New Hampshire, Vermont, wherever. You know, you were really kind of touching them all at that point.
That's a hell of an experience, man. Being able to do that. Yeah, I mean, to be able to jump on that, I mean, that's a hell of an experience. From that experience, I saw being able to connect with director Jason. You guys worked on Andre the Giant's documentary, right? But that was Arnold Schwarzenegger's documentary way back in the day. Or not even way back. That was like 2018, I think. Or 2017.
So that was a Bill Simmons documentary. Arnold was in it. What had happened was, you're right, we connected with Jason. Jason's another former HBO colleague. It's actually really kind of cool, the dream team that HBO Sports production had at one point. I mentioned Scott already. I mentioned Jason. Ezra Edelman, who directed the OJ series, was also an HBO Sports colleague of ours at one point. it really was this kind of like, playground at one point of all like these great documentary minds. And Bentley Weiner's still there. She's overseeing a bunch of amazing films that are kind of going through there. But at one point it was a veritable who's who of kind of people who've worked on these things now. So we met with Jason and we were having a beer, a lunch with him, pretty much just trying to say like, hey, we really like what you've worked on. Maybe we could work on something in the future. Not really thinking anything was going to come of it. He had just done the 85 Bears, which we had thought was this really powerful documentary. There's a moment at the end of it where Buddy Ryan writes a letter to all of his former teammates. And it's just like a very simple letter, not much. He was having a real hard time at that point. But then Jason hands that letter to Mike Singletary. Mike Singletary, former coach of the 49ers, big, strong inside linebacker, looks at it and goes, I can't read this, and just like starts bawling. And it was just one of those things where you're like, wow, that is a powerful, emotional thing. And if nothing else, I just want to talk to this guy who was able to do this.
Yeah.
So we got together and he had mentioned like, hey, this Andre thing is pretty much all but done. I'd love to have you guys work on it. This was a little bit later on, not obviously the first meeting, but we had kept that rapport. But during that first meeting, he mentioned, oh yeah, and at some point there might be this Michael Jordan thing. And that was when the light kind of come up. And was like,
just a little thing, just a little thing, huh? Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. And not to like bore you guys with the detail, but that was when the first time we'd heard about the 500 hours of never before seen footage shot in 1998 that we realized was this kind of like, legend within the sports documentary community, that people had heard that there was all this type of stuff. And you're just like, wow, maybe at some point we're going to be the guys who get to look through this. Like that's powerful when you're talking about this type of relationship and this type of background.
I remember seeing, Horace Grant did an interview years ago, right? And he was talking about like, if they had social media back then, oh my Lord, like it would have just fell apart, the Bulls team.
Yeah.
But it's just amazing that, before we get into the last dance, I mean, 500 hours of just stuff that you never knew, that was just powerful itself, man. I can't even imagine the amount of time you guys had to put in.
It took a little bit. The first 500 hours took us about 2 months to get through, like that, and that's just the first that 1997-1998 season. Okay. You're not even looking at the actual game tapes with the calls from Huey Brown or Dick Stockton. You're not even looking at the old interviews from before that. You're just looking at the 1997-98 season, and it took us a while to get through that for sure.
Yeah.
It definitely makes you an expert on the subject. I feel like if you're spending that much time focusing on one specific thing, that seems pretty crazy.
The crazier thing for me was it gives you a weird concept of time. Like you spend so much looking at footage and film from 1997, 1998, like your kind of mindset's in that place where you're just like looking at people with these huge cell phones, people like reading newspapers. And I mean like reading it, not just because like a whatever, but like I want to see what's being written today. Like there's no phones. It was a weird part where they're all on a bus and they all have these huge like cell phones out.
That's
and you're just like,
funny, yeah.
It's like not only are they huge, but they're actually used for making phone calls.
and they were probably like $4 a minute or something back then.
Something absurd.
Yeah. But what was so creative that I saw is how you guys put it together, where it was like 10 years or whatever it was of documented information. That's what made it so special, is like how people can say all they want, it was confusing or whatever it was, but I thought it was very creative how you guys kind of like were going back, kind of telling the story and then bringing you back to obviously the last season, and obviously the last dance, and that was just so powerful to be able to do that, and be able to give it context and show you things you never saw. It was just unbelievable.
You make a really good point that, the way we looked at it originally was we looked at 1997-98 as this timeline, and a timeline we had to follow because that's what we were basing the film off of.
Right.
And the idea originally was, okay, we're going to go tell all these side stories, and sometimes we'll go, backwards in time. Sometimes we'll go, maybe as far back as 84, maybe to 96, back to 93. go forward to 2009, do all this stuff. And we kind of like had done this zigzag. And it wasn't until we started to actually edit this that Jason, our editors, and us sit down. And we came up with this idea that, no, it's not one timeline with jumping off points, which it could have been. It's two timelines. It's 1997-98 running as the main timeline. Right. And then it's 84 to 98 running. And at some point they collide. And I do see a lot of people talk about how confusing it is. And, you know, it's tough that I think with act breaks for commercials, I think with a lot of stop-start, that definitely is a challenge that weren't necessarily accounting for in the edit. But when you think about the fact that it's the Bulls in 97-98 and Jordan's journey with the Bulls as a dynasty from 84 to 98, it always, I feel, it's like simplifies itself from there. But it was a real journey for us to get there to realize that it was the two pieces of the puzzle.
I thought it was very creative. I mean, I was talking with Chris about it too, and it's just, I thought it was cool because it gave you a different flavor. I mean, I don't remember people doing that before with with some type of documentary or docuseries. And then how did it work? So ESPN picked it up, and then they're going to roll it out onto Netflix eventually?
So I'm not privy to the exact particulars of the deal. Sure. I can just tell you the things that I know when I came in.
Sure.
Was that ESPN obviously is a big partner of the NBA's, and so the deal was that they were going to have first run domestically because mostly they're a United States company. Yep. To Netflix, it's a big deal that they're worldwide and doing a lot of things outside of it. So the terms I understand it to be were ESPN had it for its initial run for a few months, and then there's a plan for another rollout when Netflix gets it in for a US run, and then they'll both own it for forever. But it was day one Netflix globally, day one ESPN nationally.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. And they're just such. I mean, those are branding giants, so they figured it out. They'll figure out how to market it, so they know what they're doing.
Maximize revenue.
Yeah, they definitely know what they're doing. How long did this take? Because I saw, like, for example, this was supposed to originally come out, I want to say, June or July of this year? And then obviously the quarantine and everything went mad with COVID. And you guys had to basically finish it, right? So it wasn't even finished yet, from my understanding, right?
It was not.
Okay.
So to answer your question, how long did it take? So we started on it in January of 2018. January 15th, 2018 was my first day on the project. And it took us a few weeks, months are reading books, getting footage, watching footage. It was a lot of reading, a lot of just going back through kind of timelining things out, seeing what you needed to get. So by the time we started shooting, which I believe was June of 2018, we'd already been working on it for 3 or 4 months at that point. We had done some editing, we'd done some trailers, we'd done some like little things. We had gotten some footage in. Sure. But June was when it really started to rubber is meeting the road. And Jason, Jake, our other producer, really started to shoot pretty much nonstop until November of that year. I remember we had a Thanksgiving trip out to Charlotte where we shot with his family, Michael's family, a lot of friends of his out in Wilmington. And then came back, and that was kind of like the bookend on phase one of his of shooting. And then it wasn't until we got into the next year that we started to keep on going. Meanwhile, we're editing all of this, and editing really kind of hit its stride in October of 18, and went through obviously until we finished it. So we were slated to air in June, and the idea was that this was going to be during off days of the NBA Finals. I believe that June 4th was the first day of the finals, and it was going to be 2 episodes for each off day. So I believe it's going to start on June 4th and finish by the 11th.
Okay, that makes sense because they would market. I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Branding.
yeah, and it was
that makes sense. Okay,
exactly, and it was going to air on ABC for the first couple episodes and shift over to ESPN, and it was going to be red carpet, cherubs,
sure.
trumpeteers, and all that stuff. So as COVID starts to break out, I get a call from the executive producer at ESPN, John Dahl, about what's it look like for us to move this up, and I kind of just shrug. I go, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of challenges of doing this. And, I think originally we had thrown out early May. And I go, yeah, we can do those types of things. And I think later that day, maybe that weekend, he called me up and said, what about, I think it was April 12th. Maybe it was before that. Maybe it was April 7th. That was the first date he threw out. He goes, can we do this? And I remember being like, I don't know.
Yeah, especially because it's so much time, man. Then the pressure's on. And now the spotlight's like, let's go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
And we had only gotten 3 episodes finished and delivered at that point. So you were talking about, we had already gotten 7, 8 episodes agreed upon. Like, this is what it's going to be. But there's still a whole bunch of things that have to be done afterwards. You still have to, all the footage that you're using from anyone that isn't ESPN or stuff you've shot, you've got to go buy it. You have to go get it in, right? It has all these watermarks on it. You have to get rid of all that stuff. You have to go get it colored and mixed. You have to get that to Jason and approved. You have to get any notes addressed again. And then you still have to get that delivered to all of your partners for air. And you can't just get it delivered 15 minutes before airtime. You got to get it to them like a couple days. So it was a real process. And I remember the first couple days we were talking through it, there was a lot of, are we going to be able to pull this off? Like, a lot of just kind of like nervous energy.
Yeah.
And to, Jason's credit, to everybody's credit, it was like, all right, we're locked in. We had nowhere else to go. So it wasn't like, you're splitting time between home and the office.
That's a good point.
You're just moving from your office to your bed, which is like 12 steps. You're going to like take your weekends in the living room. Like, there's not much else going on at that point. That was when it was real crazy. And so we just kind of like buckled down. I remember I had a call with the Netflix people about like, hey, these are the goals we're meeting. And about 2 weeks, 3 weeks after we'd accelerated the timeline, there was just like, all right, we're going to pull this off. But it was crazy. It was real nervous there for a bit.
Yeah. I gotta ask, because you can't just pass over that. How was it walking in, meeting Mike in Charlotte? Because I'm a fan of Mike, and I'll just tell you real quick. If you remember Fred Carter, one of the assistant coaches of the Bulls? Okay. So Fred Carter's daughter used to babysit me way back in the 80s when I lived in Chicago. So Michael's aura is just unbelievable to me because I remember seeing him, way back in the day. But I can't even imagine going and seeing him and being around his family like that. What were you feeling, Mike?
So I don't have a good story from it, but I'm going to recall what Jake said to me because he had the best thing of it all. And he said, I remember when he walked in. The first interview was at a rented house. It was a house that was for sale. That we had set up in just because, he has kids. We wanted to do things away from his family. We wanted to make it easy. So he walks in and he's got a change of clothes on a hanger. And Jake said, he goes, I remember my first instinct was when I looked at him was to look at the ground. Like, and it was just like what the aura was of him. It's like, oh man,
he's that intimidating.
You can't look Michael Jordan in the eye. Like, it's crazy, but that's like, you're right. Like, there is an aura of it. So I can't quantify it good, but like that's I remember I heard that and I was like, that sounds right.
Got it. Tell me this. Is it I'm sorry, Chris, go right ahead.
Yeah, with that, he has such a powerful, image and character about him, and he has, he wants to protect that image. And when you're doing a documentary about him, how much like input does he have to make sure that he's being portrayed correctly?
So there's a lot of belief that just because Michael's a participant in this documentary and a partner in it, that he was like, no, take that out. I don't think there was ever an occasion where we ever heard Michael's not cool with this.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I mean, if you think about like where we went with all these things, gambling, his father, everything in between, there really isn't a stone left unturned. Conspiracy theories on suspension from baseball, like, when I was bringing this up to people at bars or whatever, like that was where they always wanted to go. It's like, I know something. It's like, You don't know anything. That was actually what was being alluded to back in 1994. So you're not like some great Reddit sleuth or whatever. But the only thing that we would hear from the camp was, we would actually like to bring this up in our next interview. Like, can we make sure that we schedule time for him to, tell his side of this? I don't think that this is the quote unquote Michael Jordan documentary. This is a Bulls documentary, but it's clearly something that he has his hand in. And I think that it's more than fair that if people are going to be talking about him, that he has the right to respond to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to jump ahead. Episode 7, when he's tearing up, I said, I don't know, that part right there showed you.
That was episode 8.
Was it 7
right?
or 8? I thought it was 7.
So 7, if I recall correctly, and keep in mind this has been a few weeks for me.
Sure.
Episodes 7 and 8 were bookended, where 7 is his return from baseball. It ends with "I'm back," or maybe it doesn't end with "I'm back," but it's him coming back from baseball. It's his whole baseball arc, actually.
Okay.
After that, and the end of 8 is when he finally wins the championship on Father's Day. So it's this beautiful arc. You're right, of him like crying on the ground. That, and I know how you are. Like, I saw that photo a million times, but someone said, look to me, and they go, what struck me was the sound, like that heavy crying.
What I was talking about too was the one when you guys were interviewing him, and he was talking about basically, it showed you like how tough he was on the team members. Basically, like, if you don't want to play, like that's it. And then he's like tearing up, and then he's like, cut. Man, I'm over here watching it like, okay, we can get my stuff together. I don't know how you guys got that. That was powerful.
I feel bad because you're right. That was 7. And I
was
didn't
it 7?
realize
Okay.
it. Yeah, it is 7. 8 is him crying on the ground in Father's
That's
Day.
Right. When he won a championship. Got it.
Yes. So we have 2 episodes that end with crying, which I just realized now. So how do we get that? So the first thing I'll say is that Jason is a really good interviewer. And the first thing that he always thinks is, I just want to ask these guys questions that they haven't heard before. Like, Michael has heard a million times, what's it like to shoot the shot over Brian Russell? And we also have that on 20 different interviews that the NBA has done, that ESPN has done. We have enough of him talking about that. So you have this license where you're like, I don't need him to fill in any of these things. I have this. What I need to hear are things that are beyond the pale. And so the question was, if you remember, the question is, does it hurt that this, I'm going to butcher the actual question, that, does this coming at the expense of being perceived as a nice guy hurt? And he really sits there and thinks about it for a second. And I think it hurts him a bit that he's not perceived as a nice guy, because I think he really thinks, I took all these guys under my wing. I took an organization that was nothing and built it up.
Sure.
And to hear all these people who were, he brought the best out of Steve Kerr. He brought the best out of Judd Bushley. He brought the best out of Luke Longley. Arguably, I don't think anybody else on that team goes on, aside from Horace, to have a remarkable career outside of working with him. So I think it does hurt him, where it's like, hey, I rode you hard, but you got the hardware to show for it. It was never included in the film, but Joe Klein, who was a member of that team in 1997-98, but he was also a member of the Olympic team in 1984.
Okay.
And he has a U.S. gold medal, and he's got an NBA championship ring. And he said, I call it my Michael Jordan collection. And those are both things that Michael got him. And he's just like eternally grateful for that. Like, I got to be a part of something that was bigger than myself. And I think that's how most people feel it. But that emotional feeling was just from that question. I think maybe it's a question he's never heard before.
Yeah, it made such a buzz. I mean, I don't know if you got a chance to see, Joe Rogan and Kevin Hart talking about you guys. You get a chance to see that? That right there was powerful. He was like basically the winning mindset, and basically an alien. Like, he was just cut different. Awesome, man. What interviews did you enjoy the most? Obviously, Jordan is amazing, but you guys interviewed so many people, from President Obama to, Kobe's last interview. That was emotional. Just being able to see how much obviously Jordan meant to him. You guys interviewed 200 people probably over a period. I don't know how many
Over
people. I'm just
100.
making up a number.
No. It's I actually do know the number. I think it's 106 is the
Oh,
number.
geez. Okay.
I
Wow.
think it's 106 interviews. We did Michael 3 times. We did a couple people more than once. That's a great question. I don't know that I have an easy answer for it. The interviews that I remember laughing through and enjoying, obviously, I was there for Steve Kerr's interview. And I remember thinking that we did it at the Parker Meridian in Midtown Manhattan. He was splitting games between the Knicks and the Nets. It was around the time that Draymond and Kevin Durant were having their tiff. It was the why I'm out. That's why I'm out.
So the
thing
energy
right
was got to be
then.
crazy. Yeah.
So I remember he walks in. If you look at the interview, he's got this 5 o'clock shadow. He looks a little tired.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I don't know that we're going to get what we need to out of this. You're hoping.
Yeah.
And we had asked him, like, would he possibly consider 3 hours with us? And he's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know that I can do this. And we were just like, we're going to see where it goes. We got an hour 45 with him, but we ended it because we're like, that was everything we needed. And everything he said was so poignant. Everything he said was so on the nose. He remembered everything so lucidly. He was funny. He was emotional when he talked about his father, which is a story that I don't know that a lot of people heard. I always loved his interview. I loved listening to Rodman. I think that he's just such a unique mindset and an individual. That was one of the ones I sat down and listened to, like, complete end to end. You know, there's just so many people. That's a great question. I don't know that I could name any more off the top of my head, but those are just the ones that I just remember being like, you're just hoping for a B minus, B flat, and you're just like, that was an A plus.
Yeah, you guys had a lot of A pluses. So it was powerful. Yeah, a lot of A pluses. And just to piggyback on Steve Kerr, that was unbelievable because of the fact that I didn't realize how powerful his father was, getting assassinated and things, especially in this era we're in right now. That was crunch time, you know, and being able to see how he's able to keep his mindset together and being able to control that, that's just very hard to do. And I know a lot of people in the country are dealing with that. I mean, all those having the father around and being able to still win, they can learn from somebody like a Steve Kerr.
He's obviously incredibly politically outspoken. And I know a lot of people who hear that, see that in their Twitter feed, do the, stick to sports thing.
Sure.
But when you hear where LeBron, he comes from,
talk about.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people. LeBron definitely gets it, and that's ridiculously unfair. But even Steve Kerr gets it to like he's incredibly outspoken, on Twitter. I think his Twitter shade game is second, maybe only to Chrissy Teigen.
Yeah.
But like he gets a lot of that stuff, and you realize that like, hey, he's got kind of the credentials to back it up. Born in Beirut. You said it. The father, not like murdered, but like assassinated.
Yeah.
It's like
that's a different thing. That's a different thing.
There is. And so it just like it colors his background and his his outlook on these types of things. I mean, listen, I'm the biggest like I hate the stick to sports. When I was a reporter at a newspaper, I'd get that as like that. It's absurdly unfair, but you realize that like this is a guy who not only knew it, lived it on multiple continents all over and really knows it. When you hear him and see what happened with his life experiences, and there were even more things we couldn't get into that, went to go play against Arizona State and, fans in the student section just start chanting PLO or where's your father? And I mean, just to the point where the athletic director at Arizona State had to personally apologize to him. It's a real shame.
Yeah, sickening. That's just stupidity on people, man. It's unbelievable. Yeah. What would you say is the biggest thing you learned from this? Like out of everything, of all this time that you put in the last couple of years. And I know we wanted to get into, Pit Crew Productions, of course, too. But what did you learn? I mean, now because you have your own production company with Jake, like being able to be at the peak. I mean, the Last Dance was almost like watching the Super Bowl for 5 weeks. You know what I mean? Like it had that much energy.
So, I mean, it was when it started to go off, you realize that this is like bigger than anything else you're going to work on, maybe ever, definitely for the next tidbit. And it was amazing to be able to sit back, relax, and enjoy it. I don't think we were able to enjoy it until, I don't know, episode 6 or 7 was like when you're really kind of sitting back. You're like, okay, we finished everything else, and now we can actually like take the foot off the pedal a little bit and really kind of sit back and take it. And really probably only like the last couple of weeks after it's already been done, delivered, signed, sealed off, whatever. Have you really been able to like relax with it? What did I learn from it? I mean, I learned what it takes to kind of do one of these things from scratch. Before this, I had worked on 30-minute documentaries, hour long, 90 minutes at the most. You're sitting down and you're just like, we're going to do 10 hours. And not only that, it's going to be cohesive and it's going to have things that move beginning to end from that. And I learned, how do you take on that mammoth undertaking? I remember we sat down to talk about it first. And the question was, how are we going to fill up this time? How are you going to fill it? And then toward the end, it's like, how are we going to get everything into this? And, you're realizing that all the differences that come along with that. So that was the biggest thing I learned is that, when someone gives you a 10-part series, it's a blessing, not a curse.
Got it. One last thing I got to ask you about the Jordan series. I saw when you guys were first signing the deal, is it true that you guys all bought Jordans? So it's like a celebration or something like that? I saw.
So it became this weird, I don't want to say weird, but we had like this conversation about it. First of all, do we even do it? Is it like,
Right.
Is it too much sucking up? Is it too much whatever? Then toward the end, we're like, no, this is definitely cool. Like, we're going to do this. We're like, it's not just like whatever. Everybody else wears these, so sort of things. So Jason has a really good story about it in which he said he was going back and forth with one of the heads of ESPN Films about when was it okay. He was like, hey, I'm going to dinner tonight. Is today okay?
Yeah, you wanted to say that. Yeah.
Is today the day I can wear them out? But so I don't remember exactly what day it was. I think it was May 25th of 2018 or in or around there. And that was when upfronts were for ESPN, and they had announced that they had signed the deal for this.
Got it.
And we had done the trailer for it. We're seeing the trailer air for it. I think it's a random Thursday or Friday or something like that. And you're just like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And so Jason wanted to celebrate with us, and we were going to go downtown to meet him. And beforehand, the idea was I don't remember who said it, if it was Jake or myself or whatever. We said, we're going to stop at Flight Club, which is in Union Square. And what it is, it's out of circulation Jordans. And you just go in there, and I mean, they have everything. They're all saran wrapped. They're super nice and cool. And so we went and each picked out a pair. Jake got a pair of the Flyknit ones, the Shadow Edition. I got just the regular Shadows. I still have them to this day.
I saw the black and gray. I saw you posting, man. I said, okay, I'm watching, man. I'm watching.
Those are nice. Those are nice.
Yeah.
Those are fresh. So, we definitely had to rock out with them, and just kind of like it's like
it's fun.
There were lots of little victories along the way. That was a big one. Getting a first cut of episode 1 was a big one. You realize that it wasn't like one big, it's over. It's like it got signed. It got, your first shoot with Jordan is done. Your first shoot period is done. Your first cut of episode 1 is done. Your first lock cut is done. Your first delivered cut. All these different monuments along the way. And you got to kind of savor those and celebrate them, because you're never going to, the finish line's never going to be as great as you think it is. So just pick up the little ones along the way.
It's powerful. And, and just for our listeners, man, I know you're a humble guy, man, but look, Pit Crew Productions with his partner, Jake, they very, very talented. I was looking at a lot of your guys' stuff, work with a lot of different people, a lot of different sizzle, videos and things, just powerful stuff, man. When did you guys form that? Was that about 5 years ago that you guys?
Exactly. So so Jake was another colleague of mine from HBO Sports. We actually sat next to each other.
The dream team inside HBO,
man. I'm telling you, I know Grantland isn't a thing, but that's a good oral history for a few years from now. The 11th floor of the HBO building. So Jake and I were office mates, and we sat next to each other. We BS'd all the time. Mm-hmm. And so around the time that I was contemplating leaving, and had heard about this opportunity on the Circus, he was getting to be at that point as well. He had just shot something that had gotten, for HBO that was really cool. And he was like, okay, I'm growing into this role. I had just edited something for HBO. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of growing into like a more fully formed producer and able to do other things. And I remember we talked about it like over coffee. We're just like, hey, we could do this. And I forget who said we could do this, and the other person said we could do this together. And that's kind of how it started, where it's just like, I think it was a little bit of fear, trepidation, just like, hey, I'm about to do something that I have no idea what I'm doing in. You're one of my closest friends in this and colleagues and one of the people I trust. You know, if you're going to jump with someone you know. And that's kind of how we did it. We did it hand in hand for that and for every project since then. You know, there were definitely days that was sketchy when Circus was on hiatus or something like that. But, you know, we got through it, and it's been really cool. Yeah, we've worked on great things. We were really fortunate to work on the Olympics. We've been able to work on a lot of different projects. And the goal now is, you know, trying to get some of our other stuff out there.
Very creative. Very, very creative. So it's pretty cool, man, what you guys are doing and being able to work on it. What's also so powerful, similar to Chris and our stories, is like you guys have known each other for a long time and then being able to partner up.
Jump in.
It's great, man. It's a great feeling, you know. We got to ask you, man, Vegas, because you lived here for a while. What's your favorite restaurant in Vegas?
Ooh, that's a good one. So there's, I am particularly fond of Mexican food. I grew up in the Bay Area. I didn't grow up. I went to high school in the Bay Area. I always loved, you know, a good Mexican food. So I'm going to tell you guys a restaurant, but I need you to give me the name of it.
Of course,
It's
all right.
All right. So it's like around Desert Inn or by the Country Club. It's a nice Mexican restaurant. Like the best salsa you could have. I can't remember. It's like, if you go past the Country Club, not what is the Country Club on? What avenue is that on? Las Vegas Country Club with the golf course. That's not DI, is it?
Cross Street. I'm trying to remember what that cross street is. My mind's going blank, Chris. It's not Red Rock. It's not Red Rock.
Las Vegas Country Club.
No. I'm talking about Las Vegas. So it's like near the university where the planes fly directly over.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I should just pull it up on Google right now.
I'm gonna find it. We'll give them their shine, man. But it's a Mexican restaurant off of Desert Inn. We'll give them their shine.
Yes.
So.
Oh, okay. But that's it. That's what I always go for. You know, I'm gonna actually pull it up here. All right, Las Vegas.
Yeah, because I'm super curious. We gotta find it.
I don't know which one it is. We gotta give them their shine.
All right. Here we go. So there's the Country Club. I've got it. So it is Desert Inn.
Okay.
So, all right. So that's Las Vegas Country Club. There's Country Club Towers. Oh, sorry. I was meaning Las Vegas National Golf Course. Oh,
National Golf Course. Okay.
That is, now my face is red.
No, you're fine.
And I'm going to do Mexican restaurant.
It's just so you guys know.
And I'm going to name something, like, and it's going to be.
So you can find some stuff fast.
Oh, yes. Linda.
Michoacan?
But yes.
Michoacan. Oh yeah, they have a few of them here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Linda Michoacan. Okay. Shout out to Linda Michoacan. That's good food. Very good food. Chris and I have been there before, so that's good stuff.
My wife will be like mad at me if I don't mention Metro Pizza. While we were there in Vegas at UNLV, obviously, like you had to go. That was like the fancy night. You get like one of the couple bottles of wine at the table. There was like $6 or something like that.
There you go. Yeah.
Great times.
There's two good places. Metro Pizza and Linda Michoacan. It's great, excellent.
The New York friends are gonna be mad at you that you're coming to Vegas for pizza.
Yeah, you ain't lying.
You know, it's like, oh, okay. And then all right, so last one. Yep. I loved bar trivia at the Crown and Anchor. Like and everything. There's the theme to this, as you can tell, which is places you can stumble back to your dorm at when you're at UNLV. Yeah. All these places are, but. Crown and Anchor trivia, bar trivia there. I cannot wait for phase 2 or phase 3 because I could go for some bar trivia right now.
Good deal. Yeah. We're close, man. We got about another 2 or 3 weeks, man, and we opening up. So it's great.
Let's do it.
To see. So tell us, what's next for you guys, man? I know Pit Crew is moving. What's on the horizon for for rest of 2020 and 2021?
Well, we're having a lot of the same challenges everybody else has. There's no sports right now. And so there's some opportunities that are starting to come on the horizon. Jake has already committed to doing a documentary on wrestling again. So that'll be really cool to see coming forward. I'm still kind of figuring it out. We've got a few kind of opportunities, calls kind of coming forward. Nothing solidified yet, but when we're done, when we have it, we should get together and do this again.
We definitely should, man. And it's
we look forward to it. It'll be awesome.
Yeah, we got to stay on your radar, man, for sure. And when I'm in New York, man, I got to check you out.
Come grab a beer whenever.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, we appreciate you hanging out with us, man. You shared a lot of
Yeah, thank you,
knowledge,
man. I'm
man,
excited.
and
A lot of
it's just great.
insights.
Yeah, and for the listeners, man, I mean, you gotta watch The Last Dance. Sorry, you have to. It's one of the best series that I've seen. One last question for you: how often are you in Vegas?
That's a good question.
Yep.
My family has all moved out of there, so now
Okay.
it's just friends that I go visit
Sure.
out there. I'm
Yep.
still out here like once or twice a year, fantasy football, things like that, big fights, whatever.
Okay.
Obviously, haven't made it in 2020 yet.
Okay.
I've got a friend's wedding. Hopefully, it still takes place in end of this year, so I'll be out there for that.
Oh, hit
And then
us when you
also,
come, man, for sure.
for sure. And then also, hopefully, Coach TJ can get that team back in order. Like, I just want to be back at the MAC. I want to see full rebellion and everything like that. Like, let's get UNLV basketball back where it needs to be.
100%.
Now, looking forward to that.
Yeah, 100%. especially the last
Aren't
thing
we all?
we got to get that open and with the stadium. I mean, with the Oakland Raiders stadium, man. I mean,
exactly.
UNLV
UNLV football, like yes, but I will say, end of last season, obviously, you didn't get the conference tournament in, but like it ended the right way, and you're just like, there's something building there, there's something growing there, and when you watch the Sweet 16 teams there back in 2007, you're just like, nothing better than that feeling.
Yep. Just gotta go, man. We on it, man. So we really appreciate you, man. Seriously, hanging out with us at the Vegas Circle. So we appreciate it, bro.
Awesome.